tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles. I'm coming at you for the RBLR Sports Show, and I am here for the Rowdies podcast specifically with my usual co-host, Carlos. Carlos, it is Tuesday that we're recording, but, we can still ask about the weekend. How was your weekend?
My weekend was all right, James. Not much going on. Actually, no, I take that back. There was a lot going on. I was telling you off air here that we're wrapping up our recruitment period for my fraternity. Shout out Zeta Psi. Everything that's going on with that's always a busy time. But it's a really good time. I love meeting all the new students and potential new members. Did watch the Rowdies game, which we will touch on here in a little bit. Kept an eye on the Georgetown soccer game, which was on national TV on Friday on Fox Sports 1 against St. John's. Unfortunate to take a loss there. Currently keeping an eye on the Georgetown game right now on another screen against James Madison University. They're kind of in a little bit of a slump themselves right now, kind of struggling to start the season, which is unfortunate. I can't say my soccer teams are off to a hot start on one side of things and not closing very well on the other side of things, James, but we'll get into that here in a little bit. How was your weekend, James? Like anything going on down there in Florida?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of things going on. I know that for one thing, my fiance's derby team, they are getting started up coming up this weekend. So, there was the usual practice and everything last weekend, and that did take up a little part, but nothing too big yet anyway. Let's talk, however, about what we are here to talk about. And Carlos, I think you and I have been avoiding it maybe a little bit, but the Tampa Bay Rowdies, unfortunately, this past Saturday, lost again, this time 1-0 away to Detroit City. So for anyone keeping score at home, this is 4 losses in 6 games. And it is not a good recent record, obviously, but it's where we are right now. So, Carlos, neither you nor I will get any points because we both predicted a draw for the game against Detroit City. Obviously, no reason for us to cheer at this point for our predictions, but we do have a home game to preview for this weekend when we play Birmingham Legion on Friday. Please follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at RBLR Sports. And please, of course, like and subscribe to our podcast on all major podcast platforms. Now, I will get us going here with a quick recap, and we can move into our questions and analysis, if that's all right with everyone listening. So, obviously, let's get into the starting 11. That was CJ Cochran in net, Lawrence Wyke, Robert Castellanos, Connor Aintley, and Aaron Guillen at the back. Lewis Hilton was sitting in front of them. Then Dayon Harris, Leo Fernandez, Jan Ecker, and Sebastian Dalgard appeared a bit as a 4 in front of him. Obviously it was a little fluid. And Steven Dos Santos got the start up top. And the Rowdies held out until very late in this game. Unfortunately, though, when a goal was scored, it was by Antoine Hopino, a former Rowdy player. So that was also a bit of a kick in the gut. He scored in the final 10 minutes, and then we were shut out for this game. The Rowdies continued their recent poor form away from home in a tight one overall, and it should be noted, unfortunately, CJ Cochran and Robert Castellanos both went off with injuries in the second half there, and CJ Cochran in the final 10 minutes, in fact. So that gives us cause for concern for the rest of the season, and at least, the game coming up this week, we will have to see when we can talk to Neil Collins what it looks like later on, and hopefully there will be good news. Now, Carlos, if you could, please, let's get into the questions and analysis here. And I'm just going to start it off with this one for you. Another weekend and another away loss, but what did this one look like in particular before we try and make any comparisons to previous games?
Yeah, James. So before we get into here, why this loss looked different to me, let me just say how annoyed I was by Antoine Hopino's celebration. Oh, my goodness. Him doing the little dance, I don't know what that was. That frustrated me so much here in my apartment. My friends saw me visibly just get so upset, and I'm like, what are you looking at? And I showed them this celebration. Oh my goodness. I think he's had a vendetta out for us ever since we been posting that picture of him on Twitter after the Louisville game. He really wanted that goal. Good for him. He got the goal. He got the game winner against us. Whatever. Putting that aside, this lineup, James, the one that you just read out here, it was a very like different-ish lineup than the one we've kind of gone out with traditionally this season. Steven Dos Santos is like the lone striker without a La Cava and the Leo Fernandez flanking him. Kind of unique for how we've usually gone out to the field this season. Anytime he's been up there, you usually see both La Cava and Fernandez to his left and right. But on this occasion, he had kind of like a 4 midfielder, maybe 5 midfielder formation with Dalgard, Ekra, Hilton, Fernandez, and Harris. Fernandez kind of like as an attacking mid, and Harris and Dalgard as like your wingers. It was very different from what we've gone out there traditionally with, and it felt a little more conservative than usual. Not saying that Neil was going out there playing for a draw, but having like rewatched the game earlier today, seeing how we kind of started a little bit strong at least, and then progressively Steven Dos Santos looked more and more isolated up top. It looked like the midfield just kept dropping a little bit as the game went on, and it looked like we were playing very defensively, which I do not like personally. Not a big fan of that, especially like in this bit of a cold streak when you want to go out there and put out a really good performance. It just didn't seem like the way to do that. And I think that's why, kind of like in the mid to late part of the first half, I think that's why Detroit had the better chances, was because we were kind of sitting back a little bit, even though at the end of the game we ended up with pretty significantly more possession as we kind of stepped up a little bit more in the second half, didn't really do much with it. But especially in that first half, we just felt very scared, a little too conservative for my liking. I don't know. It looked like we were just a bit intimidated on Detroit's field.
Yeah, I took a pretty I took a pretty similar view of the game overall as to what you just said. I noticed that Leo Fernandez and Sebastian Dalgard were kind of playing together in the first half, and I thought that their combinations were really well. Went really well. Sebastian Dalgard was getting himself into good areas, and then unfortunately, a lot of the execution I felt really let him down there. Leo Fernandez, once again, was kind of the playmaker in any given situation that we were going to have to rely on. But in the second half, especially, I did not really see that the Rowdies were getting a lot moving forward. So, from what I took from it, I also went on Twitter and I read through a thread here from John Morrissey at USL Tactics. Obviously, I would recommend him. He's been on this show before as a guest, and I would like to say anybody who's not following him, you definitely should, because he's got great information. But one of the things that he noticed as well was that the way that Detroit City lined up, they did not have Pablo Boteo Foss, who usually starts up front for them. And, he's been a guy that we mentioned, in fact, in the preview for this game. But when he does not start, then they could line themselves up in a little bit of a different way. And it seemed like Detroit had one striker up front and actually two players playing underneath him, as opposed to two strikers and one playing underneath them. Kind of a little bit of a dissimilar formation, make it a little bit different for the Rowdies to have to work with. And the two wingbacks, as it were, they were definitely heavily involved in the defensive work for Detroit City. So they would move inside and they would cover anything by Lewis Hilton and Jan Ekra, who were effectively the two in our midfield. And that really kind of held them back from doing what they would often like to do. It seemed in this game that what the Rowdies got a lot of success from was, rather than trying to do their usual playing style and trying to get the patterns that we're used to seeing them create, what they would do instead is a lot of the stuff that is kind of press resistant. So a player is press resistant when he can not cough up the ball when he's under pressure. And, that we saw a lot of that, I think, from Jan Ekra, and we saw a lot of that from Leo Fernandez. Those were two of the more positive players, in my opinion, on the night. But without the overall ability to create the patterns that the Rowdies team is used to producing. Obviously, that impacts our ability to be successful overall. So you can be as press resistant as you want, but if you can't really do anything else and you're just down to those players who can create space for themselves, usually on the dribble, then you're going to have to wait for them to do that. And obviously, the chances of dribbling successfully a whole team, as much as Leo Fernandez did try it, he only got one really good chance off of it, and that was 5 minutes in. Unfortunately, he did not score that. So, yeah, it seemed like we were getting shut out of all of our usual ability to create the patterns that this team is so used to creating off of the fullbacks, especially. I didn't see that they were super involved in getting us forward, unfortunately.
And that Leo Fernandez chance, by the way, the one you just referenced, that was insane. Like that whole dribble, like I don't even think it made like the highlight video on USL, but that was a very like impressive sequence of events.
If he had scored that, it would have been up there for a potential goal of the week. But unfortunately, this is where we are.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was wild. But I think it's telling that, of kind of how the game went, that's like, probably one of the best highlights we refer to on our side of things is a like single moment of, brilliance, I guess, that didn't end up in the goal, unfortunately. But again, like that one's so like that's nearly impossible. Like that, the XG or whatever, I don't know how they calculate that. Like that must have been like 0.00000001. Like there's no way that ever goes in. It was still very impressive. But yeah, I mean, if you look at, I guess, Detroit's goal, I don't even think Detroit necessarily did much better than us per se.
No, I don't think so either, honestly.
Yeah. Like
it was a defensive game, as you said, and
exactly
we were able to hold them back almost as much as they were able to hold us back.
Right. And it was really just, again, one mistake on our part in a quick moment of transition that cost us the game. I mean, Maxi Rodriguez, to his credit, very talented player, didn't really do like a ton to get by our defense. He just kind of dribbled in a straight line. And I know I'm oversimplifying it. Like, obviously watching it from my laptop is different from being on the field. Like, I'm not discrediting, that play, but it wasn't anything crazy. And frankly, I'm going to toss the blame a little bit here on Connor Antley, who just totally smoked it. Like, he just totally missed Maxi Rodriguez here by like a mile. And like, there wasn't anything, he didn't do a crazy move. He didn't, like dribble like a madman. Like, he just pretty much went in a straight line and maybe did a little feint, and Connor Antley very quickly bit on that. And that led to the goal. I mean, he just dumped it off to Hopino, and he put the game away there with one goal. It's just it's very unfortunate. Like, I'm not saying we deserve to win the game because I don't think we did. But I don't think Detroit necessarily deserves to win the game either, just based on how they played. I think the draw predictions we had were more characteristic of how this game played out. But again, that's not to, I guess, excuse how our game played out. Frankly, I think I expect more from this team, like, and the talent that's on this team. And it really is not even, I don't want to say disappointing, but at this point in the season, like, having had such a great run earlier in the season, the playoffs very much looming here. I would say I am concerned, James. Not even like, again, not very much disappointed, but I'm concerned because there's not a lot of time left here to figure it out. And it's very obvious that at some point in the season we had it right. I would say for like even like a majority of the season we had it right. So I'm a little bit worried that we won't be able to get back to that by the time these playoffs start, just based on like these performances we've seen the last couple of weeks. You mentioned what is 4 out of the last 6 games have been losses or something like that. Like, that's not where you want to be ever, but particularly this close to the postseason.
No. And that is something that we're going to talk about a little bit more. I did want to mention, where Detroit City had success, where the Rowdies did not. Obviously, it was a 1-goal game. So, there was only one real chance there that was ultimately converted. But yeah, as you said, with Connor Antley there, I really value Connor Antley's abilities attacking. He, does a very good job of getting a cross in, and he can dribble a couple people. I really value Connor Antley's abilities defensively when it comes to anticipating where he's supposed to be to step in between a player who's receiving a ball and the person who laid the pass off originally. He can do that very well, but I have not always thought that he is the best. And when it comes to defending 1v1s, now that doesn't mean that he's bad at it. That doesn't mean that he is going to give away most of them or anything, but he's definitely not the best on our team when it comes to doing that. So yeah, I unfortunately do have to give him some of the blame there. And when it came to Antoine Hopino, CJ Cochran seemed to do everything he could. He obviously hurt himself in the process, so that's not very good either. But yeah, it's kind of it's unfortunate that the couple of chances that we had, we were unable to put away. One of those was Leo Fernandez. One was Steven Dos Santos receiving it in the second half with his back to goal, and he tried a half volley, and he nearly scored off of that. It went right over the crossbar. That was a very good chance. There was one cross from Jake LaCava that came in that found Steven Dos Santos, but unfortunately the defender who was marking him was doing a very good job of that and cut out the pass. So, it's not like we couldn't have done this. I think that in the post-game press conference, Neil Collins said that, well, it wasn't a press conference. I shouldn't describe it that way. But in the post-game that they sent out to the media, then Neil Collins said that he thought that this was one of the better performances that turned into a loss. And I actually agree with him there. There are a couple of times where Neil Collins, I think I said this last week, in fact, where Neil Collins has said that, he expected that we should have got something more out of a game than we did. And I disagreed in the past. This one, I definitely did agree that we could have had something out of this game. And it would have been perfectly fair. It would have been perfectly just for the way that the game went. But it just, soccer is such a low scoring game that unfortunately you don't take even one of your chances, and they take just one of their chances. And that's all that, that's all that they need to get 3 points. So that's just the nature of the sport, unfortunately. But let's move on now that we've done a little bit of the breaking down of this game individually. I want to take this a little bit more big picture there, like I was just talking about. So, what did this loss remind us of in the previous games? Or maybe it didn't remind us of those previous games at all. For me, Carlos, I would say that, I think the games against Louisville and Colorado Springs I've described as very, very low energy. And I've described them as not what we're used to seeing from the Rowdies. And then the game against Charleston, I think that one was possibly even more disappointing because it's not like we weren't, playing against a top team and we had to calibrate ourselves properly or anything like that. It was just that we just had, I don't know, several off nights. But this one, I don't think had a ton of similarities to the way that the other games went in terms of how we did personally. But you tell me what you think.
No, I fully agree with what you just said. Like the Charleston game, I out of these last 6 games here is by far the most disappointing, given where Charleston is and how much of a team, frankly, how much better of a team I think we are than the Charleston Battery. And this game, again, like I'm not going to say we played well. I don't think I agree with Neil Collins in saying that, this is one of like the best games that ended up in a loss. Is that what you said? And I love Neil. I really do. I like he's the GOAT, but I didn't really see us play like fantastic this game. But I don't think we played bad either. So this game in the context of these last 6 games where we've lost 4 of them, it didn't really give me Charleston Battery vibes. It gave me more of like a Colorado Springs Switchbacks game vibes. When we were out there in Colorado Springs, expecting to contend, to compete, and coming out just a little bit flat-footed, not creating a ton of chances, and then having one mistake that leads to losing the game. I mean, we lost that game 1-0 as well. Something to note here, out of those last 6 games, the 4 we've lost have all been on the road. The 2 we've won have both been at home. Maybe pointing towards a bigger trend of just having struggled on the road generally this season, but I don't know, maybe it's a more recent. It's just, yeah, I wouldn't say this game necessarily reminds me of the Charleston game, but it does give me some shades of the Colorado game. So I don't know. I think the biggest concern for me more than that is just the what I just mentioned a little bit, kind of the recent, maybe not so recent trend of struggling to play well on the road. And if we, go into the playoffs with that third place spot, it's very likely that we'll be on the road at least at some point in the playoffs. So I would like us to maybe figure that out before we get there.
Yeah, that is exactly where I kind of wanted to take this now. So, with everything you just said, what does this result, along with the others, mean for us when we go away from home? That was my main question for this section because, as you just said, so let's assume that the playoffs are kind of set as they are. Louisville City probably ending in first, fair enough. Memphis, we could catch them, but let's just for hypothetical purposes say they stay in second. We keep third. And on down the line. So, in an ideal situation, the Rowdies will get to the Eastern Conference final. They will win that and move on to the USL Championship final. Now, doing that, that means that they are almost certainly going to play. If that were the case, again, this is hypothetical, then they would almost certainly have to play at least 2 games away from home, likely the Eastern Conference final and then the USL Championship final, just based on what teams, are doing. It's not guaranteed, obviously, that either Louisville City or Memphis will win their playoff games, or that San Antonio out west will win their playoff games. That obviously didn't happen last year, but that is just what's most likely based on, the fact that they are doing so well that they put themselves in these positions. So if this is such a problem for us to play away from home, what does that mean for us here? And I have to, especially ask this question in consideration with the fact that Robert Castellanos might be out with an injury and CJ Cochran might also be out with an injury. And these are 2 players that we have relied on quite heavily when they've been available. CJ Cochran a lot more than Robert Castellanos, but they are very important, obviously. What does this all mean for us going forward?
Yeah, and I think to mention, I guess Breno would be our backup here going into the playoffs if, worst case scenario, TJ Cochran is just out for the season, which again, I don't think that's the case based on how it looked, but I'm not like a medical expert, so don't quote me on that. I know very little about Breno's ability. He looks like a quality keeper in the few minutes I've seen. The Castellanos thing could be a bigger cause for concern, just given how much kind of rotation there's been on that back line area since the beginning of the season. But I mean, yeah, like I mentioned a few minutes ago here, the concern for me is very much this recent trend. Again, maybe it's a season-wide trend of not playing as well away from home as we have at home. The only away game I've been to this year has been at New York Red Bulls too, because I happened to be in New York that weekend and made the trek to New Jersey for that. And New York Red Bulls is currently the last place team in the Eastern Conference. That's a game that should be free points for us, a game that now is haunting us because we dropped 2 points there, having tied against them. Same thing with Charleston, team that's not very good. We lost against them. That's 3 dropped points. And now, we were contenders for the first place spot. Now we're, the second place spot is kind of slipping away. The third place spot isn't even really a lock. I mean, this weekend, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here, and we'll talk about our opponent, Birmingham Legion, in a little bit. But Birmingham is tied on points with us with one game, having played one extra game than us. If they manage to pull off a win against us on Friday, that battle for the third place spot gets very, very tight. And we might have to play, I don't know, I'm forgetting how the playoff is laid out off the top of my head, but that's more guaranteed away games and less so, a guaranteed home game is the way I think about it. Maybe that's a negative way to look at it, but I think that's just the reality. So it is a little bit concerning because I do want to close the season well and get as high a seed as we can so that we can play more games at home. I think it just guarantees a better performance on our part. But on the other hand, I mean, knowing that we're going to have to go on the road, I think I want to see us. I guess just the easy way to put it is we only have one more away game in these last 5 regular season games. It's away at Monterey Bay FC. Not a very good team, but a team that, comes with its challenges, having, being like across the country over there in California. I'm getting ahead of myself, but hopefully we see a better performance there. Try and get into the swing of how things might be in the playoffs away from home. I just think I think we're lucky a little bit here because the last games of the season, excluding Birmingham, aren't too strong of opponents. And I think it could get us into a rhythm going into playoffs. But again, 4 out of the last 5 games here in the regular season are at home. And I'm just hoping that we don't get too comfortable at home, knowing that we're probably going to have to go on the road at multiple points in the playoffs. So I don't know what that's going to look like. I mean, the table can move around a little bit, but looks like we're vying for, at best, that second place spot, and at worst, trying to hold on to that third place spot.
Yeah, exactly. And that doesn't, with the recent form at least, it doesn't bode well in that arena. So let's move forward then. And I want to take us to the last question here in our section. I think that we've broken down how this game went sufficiently. I think that we've talked about the implications for that. And I have one more question for us, Carlos. Who was your man of the match? I will just go ahead and say, I mean, I think it was pretty obvious for me who the most positive person was on the field and who was creating the most out there, and that was Leo Fernandez. He is my player of the match. I don't think that anybody in the defensive line really did too poorly other than Connor Antley with the mistake, but I don't think that anybody raised themselves to the same level that Leo Fernandez did in terms of his ability to try and get us back into the game before we were actually down, and then following that as well.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I mean, I mentioned it earlier. The Leo Fernandez kind of sort of almost goal was a very impressive moment of brilliance that I thought would start things for us and just ultimately did not, unfortunately. Steven Dos Santos, I would like to give him man of the match. He came pretty close to scoring on a couple occasions. You mentioned that moment in the second half where he had his back to goal, like that half volley turnaround on his left foot. Very, very impressive move. Kind of sort of almost a goal as well. But again, that's a goal with like a very low expected goal value. That doesn't usually go in. So you can't really knock him for not putting that one in. Again, you mentioned it defensively. Nobody played too bad. Fatmob would say that Connor Antley was actually the best defensive player on the field for the Rowdies, which I think is interesting. Nobody played too bad. Nobody stood out as, stellar performances. So I think the obvious answer, the answer I'll agree with you here with, is Leo Fernandez. Again, he played well, created the chances that we did have. Unfortunate not to end up on the score sheet.
All right. Well, I guess that we are in agreement on that one because I don't think that there was there were all that many options overall. But Carlos, if you could take us into the standings update, and then I will move us beyond that with the preview of our game this Friday.
Of course, let's do it. So Louisville City, unfortunately, stays at the top of the East with 63 points from 30 games played. They looked probably unassailable in that spot. They're very much pulling away with 5 games left to play. 4 games for them, 5 games for us, and 5 games for the second place, Memphis, who has 58 points on 29 games played. And here we are, still stuck in third, unfortunately. The remaining playoff spots in the East are now all secured. But what's up for movement here is the seeding. So Birmingham Legion is still our opponent this weekend, and they still sit in 4th place with 54 points on 30 games played. Following them are Pittsburgh, Detroit City, and the Miami FC, all uncatchable by Tulsa. In the West, San Antonio stays atop of the league with 64 points from 29 games played. Really been the cream of the crop this year in the USL. San Diego Loyal are guaranteed a playoff spot with 55 points from 30 games played. Behind them are Colorado Springs, Sacramento Republic, RIP in the Open Cup, El Paso, New Mexico, and now Rio Grande Valley. So things shaping up to be at least a little bit more interesting in the West than they are in the East when it comes to who's in and who's out. I don't know. Like I looked away for 1 second, and all of a sudden the Eastern playoff spots are all just kind of locked in. Don't really know when that happened. I feel like a few weeks ago it was still much closer than it is, but there we are. Western Conference, a little bit more movement expected than here in the East. So interesting stuff going on out there. I guess the only question now here in the East is where will we finish? Where will Birmingham finish? Pittsburgh and Detroit. And I guess Miami, too, has some space to climb up the table.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how it will play out, but obviously hoping that the Rowdies keep their spot and do so this upcoming weekend. That will go a long way to helping us out here. Now, before we move into that preview, I want to take a quick second to plug our shop, our online shop. Liking and subscribing is obviously free, but if you do think that you might need some new threads this year, maybe you could support our podcast just a little bit more by heading over to shop.rblrsports.com and checking out what we've got going on over there. We have got a lot of very cool designs up, and if you would like to possibly purchase one of those, well, hey, there is a promo code that you can use, COYR, for 10% off, and there will be a link in the description to the shop. So again, please check that out. We appreciate when you do so. Let's move on now to that preview. We have a game on Friday at home versus Birmingham Legion, and it is a big game. Not only is it a Friday game, and there are some before the game festivities to talk about, which we will get into, but I mean, it is big for the standings, obviously. So let's get into that now. As stated previously, the upcoming opponent, Birmingham Legion, they sit one spot behind us while level on points. We have played one fewer game, so that is important, obviously, for the season overall. Now, in their last 5 games, Birmingham have lost once away, drawn twice, and won 3 times. So that's all important as well. Frequently, Birmingham sit in a 4-3-3 style formation or something very similar, with just a little variation on top of it. They have a strong back line, and they have many dangerous attackers that we will have to watch out for. One of those is probably the biggest name people will know, Juan Agudelo. He is a former U.S. men's national team player. He has almost 30 caps for the national team, although definitely not that many goals. And he also played in MLS for a very long time. So he's somebody that we are going to have to watch out for. Possibly one of the most annoying players in this entire league is also with Birmingham Legion, and that is Enzo Martinez. If you have seen Enzo Martinez play, you will surely recognize him. He has a very large beard. He has a bun on the top of his head. He looks like Mark Bonanno of Auntie Donna, if anybody has watched Auntie Donna. But he's nowhere near as funny as Mark Bonanno. He's a lot more annoying out there. He's like a mosquito. He's just a pest. And he's somebody that we're going to have to keep an eye on for similar reasons to Juan Agudelo. Now, their back line is relatively consistent. Usually Mikey Lopez at left back, and then Fanul Kavita and Alex Carnali in the center, with Johnny Dean at the right back. That will be their usual back four in front of Matt Van Okel in net. And midfielders to know include Bruno Lapa, an attacking midfielder from Brazil, Zach Harivo, a more defensive midfielder who comes from the New England Revolution Academy, and then behind them, Anderson Asiedu, who is a Ghanaian player who, he kind of gets himself all over the field, I suppose I should say. The away fixture with Legion was our first game of the season. My family and I attended that game while my sister was still coaching in Alabama. She has since moved to southern Mississippi. But, that's the game that we all got to go and see. It was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, it only ended in a draw. It was one of only 6 draws this whole season. So, I don't know if we want to consider that necessarily drop points when it's only the first game. That was also the game that Robert Castellanos injured himself in originally when he was out for such a long period. Since then, Birmingham has significantly boosted their squad with signings, including that Juan Agudelo up top. He's going to be important, as I've said. Shutting him down will be both necessary and complicated. He has only 7 goals so far, but he does a lot more than just score goals. He obviously sets up a lot of plays that other people can then involve themselves on as well. So keep an eye on all of that. He Shutting down both wingbacks will also be important. They can be pretty heavily involved. Johnny Dean is very highly rated, and he has been linked with MLS moves in the past, all that kind of stuff. Mikey Lopez is a player who originally started as a central midfielder. He was moved to left back just because he's predominantly left-footed, and most teams need a left back, but he also has MLS experience from previously in his career. So these are two guys who are definitely going to be heavily involved in everything that they do. The difference in recent form, unfortunately, is stark. However, with this game being at home, you've got to hope that this is going to be a better outcome for us because we're playing at Al Lang, and Al Lang is supposed to be where we win. And I'm hoping, obviously, that we can do that. Birmingham are going to be going all out because they know that these 3 points will put them in a good spot ahead of us while they have a game more played than us. And, that obviously gives us some time to catch them. They want to win this one for sure. But if everyone shows up at Al Lang on Friday at 7:30, hopefully we can get everyone or get the guys on the field playing the way that we know they can, the way that they know they can, and actually win this game. I very unfortunately cannot be there this week because some sad personal issues that I don't want to get into here, but it does preclude my going. So I'm going to have to implore everyone listening, you got to get out there in my place and you got to cheer the boys on because they are going to need it. Now, with all of that being said, let's move into our predicts here. Carlos, do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I'll go first, James. I'll explain my reason here a little bit. I've been kind of bouncing back and forth here between a 2-1 win and a 1-0 win. I'm giving us a win no matter what because this is a Rowdies podcast. We're playing at home, and I want us to break this little streak we got going on here. We won our last 2 home games, so why not win the third one here? I think we can match up pretty well with Birmingham. We have a very good team. I just think it's one of those things where, like I've said so many times before, where if we play our game, we can come out victorious. I'm leaning towards a 2-1 victory because I don't think we have the capacity to pull out a shutout. It's going to be some sort of mistake where we, trip up Enzo Martinez in the box and he just flops like a maniac and they get a penalty and then, that's their goal. I think we can win 2-1. Again, I think we match up pretty well against Birmingham. It's one of those games where, we're at home. We need a big win here. We're tied up on points. These are the type of games where, especially at home, you expect the team to come out and give their best performance and, frankly, win. I don't think there's any other way to go about it. This is a pretty strong, I wouldn't even say, I hate using the term, must-win kind of game. But it's as close to a must-win kind of game as you can have at this point in the playoffs with everybody, or at this point in the season with everybody having locked in their playoff spot already. If we want to maintain this third-place spot, put it in that context, and it definitely is a must-win game because it gets a little bit more complicated to get that spot back if Birmingham leapfrogs us this weekend. So with that being said, I'm going to take a 2-1 win. I hope we can revert back to the formation we've usually played with either Steven Dos Santos or Guanzati as the main striker and LaCava and Fernandez on the wings flanking them. I think that's the best way for Steven Dos Santos. He got on the board. That's how he's been the most successful this year. I hope we can get back to that this weekend, and I think we can. And I think we will come out with a 2-1 win.
Well, I would usually try to think about how this game could be different in terms of a result so that I could give a different result. But I got to be honest, I do see the Rowdies winning here. So I'm going to go ahead and take that. But I will give a different scoreline just to be sure that you and I have different predictions here. So I am actually going to go a 3-0 win for the Rowdies.
Wow.
That's just what I'm feeling.
3 is there any reasoning behind that, or is it just a gut feeling?
It's a gut feeling. It is purely gut feeling.
I cannot I've had games like that where I've predicted a crazy win and it doesn't happen, and I can at least kind of justify. In this game, I have no justification for a 3-0 win, but if it's the gut feeling, I fully respect it, and that's a totally valid reason.
Well, that's all I got to go on right now because that is where I am. But that's what I'm leaning towards. So we're gonna go with that. Now, let's move on into our extra time segment here because there is, everyone, another reason to attend this Friday night. You should also attend because that night is going to be Legacy Night. And as part of Legacy Night, there's going to be all sorts of cool stuff going on. So the first thing, in addition to cheering on the team, there will be the introduction of the 7510 Club Hall of Fame. And that's going to be that's going to be the pregame festivities that I was referring to earlier. Now, in the Hall of Fame, they are going to induct 3 players: Keith Savage of the modern era and Mike Connell and Perry Vanderbeck of the old Rowdies. So that will be the bridge to the new era from the players who are also from the old era, and they will be, like I said, part of the new Hall of Fame class. And then we will see how that expands in the future. But I think that that's very cool that they're including this, and that this is going to be part of what we see for the evening. Now, in addition to that, because it is the 10-year anniversary of the 2012 championship, the 2012 NASL championship, it should be noted, several winning players from that team will be there. And actually, it should be more than just players, but people involved in the front office staff as well. So let's go through that list. Ricky Hill will be here. Jeff Atnella, Andres Arango, whom I interviewed for RBLR earlier this season, JP Rodriguez, Takuya Yamada, Dan Scott, Thurston Johnson, Draymond Washington, Stuart Campbell, Shane Hill, Evans Frimpong, Luke Mulholland, Mike Ambersley, and former owners David Laxer and Andres Nestor. That all is pretty cool, and I am glad that all of this is going to be part of this Rowdies Legacy Night. They are really trying to instill the bridge to the past with the modern team. Like I said, that's going to be important for fans to recognize that this isn't just a brand. The Rowdies, it is exactly that. It is a legacy. There is a team that this name comes from, and we are thinking of them not just when we are out there on the field, but when we are, thinking about the future and trying to keep a team like the Rowdies going for the long term. And I'm excited. I'm just sad that I won't be able to be there myself, but I am excited that this is something that the front office staff, as it currently exists, is trying to maintain and build upon. That is very cool. Now, let's move on with the news, because speaking of former Rowdies, we have to say congratulations to Lee Cohen, who was recently hired after he left the Rowdies. Now, Lee Cohen has been hired as president of a new club, and that club is, unfortunately, Charleston Battery. Now, I really respect Lee Cohen. I think that he did an incredible job with the Tampa Bay Rowdies, and I think that this is an awesome hire for Charleston Battery. He was formerly with the NASL, the NASL front office, and then he moved on to be with the Rowdies, our team specifically. And now, after he's left the Rowdies, he will be coaching, or not coaching, but acting as the president for Charleston. And I honestly think that this bodes really well for them in the future. Carlos, I don't know how you feel about this. I'm bummed about it as a Rowdies fan, but as someone who has very briefly met Lee Cohen, but he's always been such a nice and warm guy, and he's obviously very good at his job. So I'm happy for him, and I'm bummed for us. How do you feel?
Yeah, I expressed how awesome Lee is in previous episodes when it was announced that he was departing from the club. So I won't repeat everything I said, but yeah, Lee is such an awesome guy. Like, he was the guy that made me feel like really special just being at this club and being, a big fan of the club. He made me feel very much at home when I said, like, I think I said, like, hey, or like, thank you for everything you're doing. And he goes, oh, no problem, Carlos. And I was like, what? He knows my name? Like, what the hell? Like, whatever. So that was awesome. And it definitely sucks to see him go. But I'm like, man, like, couldn't you have at least gone somewhere like the Western Conference? Like, now he's going to be very much building a team that contends for a title against us. And I know they very much will contend for a title because it's Lee Cohen and he knows how to build a successful football club, because he did it here over like the last decade pretty much. So definitely expect Charleston to be title contenders here within the next like 4 years, because it's just Lee and I know he can do that. But again, definitely sucks for us. But I'm very confident that the Tampa Bay Rowdies / Tampa Bay Rays organization knows what they're doing, and I think they'll likely bring somebody up from the inside already. I don't see a situation where they bring somebody from outside. It just doesn't really make sense. So very confident in what our organization can do. Definitely excited for Lee and his new opportunity. But again, just a little bit sad that he's staying in the Eastern Conference and playing against us.
Seriously. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to the revamp of Charleston Battery, as it were.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, we'll see how it turns out. And as I said, I do wish him the best of luck, but not against us. Not against us.
Yeah. It's gonna be one of those things where I turn off my phone tonight, and then like tomorrow it's gonna be like Charleston Battery building new 10,000 person soccer specific stadium.
Yeah.
Like Charleston Battery sells player to Manchester United for like $20 million. Like it's gonna be one of those random things overnight. They just become really good out of nowhere. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. Good for him.
Yes. And now let's keep going with our extra time news. We have an Orange County update. They will be staying in their stadium for the 2023 season. The City of Irvine Council relented on their plans that were, let's say, proposed by the LA Galaxy organization, and they have now allowed Orange County to play in the championship stadium for 2023. Now, what this means for the future, who knows at this point? We certainly don't, but I think at least them having one more season without the rug being pulled out from under them and them having all that time to plan ahead for, contingencies on whether or not they will be able to play there in 2024, which, I mean, it would be stupid, but whatever. I'm sure that the city council has their own agenda, and I hope that it's not all being written by LA Galaxy, as I said, but we can at least say congratulations at the time being to Orange County for their fans' doggedness and being able to keep the stadium in their tenancy for at least another season. And I think that that's good for the USL overall, because it was a weird situation. But anyway, sure. We will move on from that one now. I do want to take a moment to say, please check out my article on the USL's partnership with the Caribbean Football Union. I really liked being able to write this one, because this is news that I really like as a fan of soccer. I think that everything that goes into this partnership is really cool, and I hope that it turns into a lot of awesome things, like a lot of awesome players coming to USL. I name one in there that I really like, Angel Montes de Oca from Dominican Republic. I'd love to see him playing in this league someday, but it's beyond just players. So there was a lot to go over, and I took a good little bit of time to try and get all of my thoughts on the partnership in that article. So yeah, please do check it out and let me know if you have any feedback. Obviously, that would be great too. The final thing that we want to get to before we do a special moment on this show is just to say that it was announced today. The Rowdies have partnered with Hisense, the technology and TV guys, to install a new mini pitch, the first of many to come. Now, I don't believe, Carlos, that they had any kind of location in mind, but yeah, it's cool that they are going to try to expand the Rowdies' reach by putting in these mini pitches that are branded with the Rowdies on them. Yeah. And I'm hoping that will also lead to a lot more people getting into soccer who might not have otherwise.
Yeah, I saw that for a location. I saw something about the Waters Avenue complex site where the new training facility will be. I don't know if that's, I might be misquoting it, because I don't know if that's going to be the location for the mini pitch, or if that's just where they're like doing some sort of ceremony announcement type thing. So I'll have to double check. But I saw something about that site, and it really bothers me that I can't give a direct answer for that, because I totally forgetting what exactly that site meant. But if I had to take a stab in the dark, it looks like it'll be somewhere around there on the Tampa side, which would be very, very cool for a City of Tampa outreach.
Yes, and I think that it would be good for them to get into that area, which is building itself up pretty quickly and turning into something more than just a Hooters and a bowling alley.
For sure. Shout out Waters Avenue, my home road.
Yeah. That's that, and then it would be even better there. But all right, now we want to take some time separate from this show and talk about something that I think is important for us to mention, because it is important for me. When I was, an irregular fan in the prior years, I would, attend games sparingly and, try and follow the team, but not very closely. And then when I decided, why am I not supporting local soccer more so, I want to get more into this. And I've talked about this in the past, but I really wanted to start, attending games a lot more frequently come 2020, the season that was 2020. And we all know how that turned out, obviously. But the year before, I found a way to follow the team that was a lot better than just anything I had found online. And that was the podcast, The Unused Substitutes. Now, they kept going all through, 2019 and up till now. They had been going, I think now they said for 8 years overall. And unfortunately for me and everyone, I think, involved, they are going to stop producing the podcast after this year, at least in the frequency that they have been. I think that was where they left it from the announcement on their last show. So I am a Patreon supporter of theirs because, like I said, when I found them originally, I was like, I need to get more into the local soccer team. There's no reason for me, a soccer fan, someone who wants to support local things, to not do this. Why am I not learning about them and getting involved in those ways? So the guys on there, Steven, Matt, and Dan, they are very cool guys to meet in person. When I got on this show, by talking to the producer Eureka, he ultimately got us press passes, and that was all very cool for me at the beginning. I was meeting all these people that I had never thought that our paths would cross, all that kind of stuff. And when I first ran into, I think Matt was the first unused guy that I met, but he was so gracious and he was so nice. He's been that way every time I've hung out with him since. And stood next to him at the game away to Orlando City earlier this year in the Open Cup. So he is going to continue going to games along with Steven. It is Dan who's moving out of town, so he will not be attending games, obviously, as frequently, unfortunately. But all of them have been, really great guys. And the path that they've set up for media to follow the Rowdies. They talked about how, they started that because there wasn't a lot going on in that space beforehand. And the thing that they wanted to do was, leave the media space, as it were, a bit better than it was when they started. And I can say from my short-lived experience in this field, and also just as a fan, that they definitely did that. I hope that they know that they have done a good job in this field, and I hope that they feel satisfied with the work that they've done, even if they might have wanted to do this or that, anything in the future. They've done so much. They've done so much already, and I appreciate all of them for all of the work that they've done. And again, being so gracious towards us, who were a new podcast on the block, so to speak. But yeah, they are just great guys. And I wish them all the best luck in every single thing that they do in the future. And if that is not a podcast, then I'm sure that they're going to turn it into 10,000 other awesome things.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you summarized everything better than I could. Yeah, I mean, those guys like, Matt, Dan, Steven, in more recent times, like, I think I replied to one of their tweets, like their announcement tweet, saying that they were the one that when they announced that they're stopping production of the show after the season, I was letting them know that that was kind of the first source that, turned my initial casual Rowdies fandom, maybe keep up with the score on Google, I don't know, whatever, into more of a obsession, into more of like what it is today. The Rowdies very much take up like so much of my time. Like I watch so many games, I tweet about them so often. It just is part of like my life, and that's very much in part because of these guys at the Unsubs. You just can't even really explain like how much of an impact and how much of a positive effect they've had on the wider Rowdies community. It's interesting because when Eureka came over to me for the first time to pitch, joining as a co-host for the RBLR Rowdies show, initially I'm like, what the hell? Like, I can't, be another show. Like that can't happen. It's like, it's only the Unused Substitutes. Like that was forever the Rowdy source of information. It wasn't even like, RBLR Sports wasn't even necessarily, it's not really like a competitive aspect to it. They kind of coexist. But it was always like the Unsubs have always just been there. You know what I mean, James? Like,
yes.
they've just been like, it's been the Rowdies source, not even like just for podcasts, but you don't see Rowdies news on TV very often. You know, I think some of the local media only pays attention when playoffs start, with the exception of like maybe the guys at WFLA. Shout out to them on occasion. Like the unused substitutes is like the Rowdies news source. You know what I mean? So I just don't think anybody can overstate how much of a positive effect they've had. So yeah, I think you summarized it best, James. I can leave it at that. I'll definitely personally thank these guys when I see them in person. All of them have had such a huge effect on my Rowdies fandom. Steven especially. When I first interacted with him, I still remember it was like truly interacted with him. I remember I was like an awkward 8th grader, just kind of finding a team to follow and falling in love with the Rowdies very quickly. Went to that away day in Jacksonville, and Steven very much saw me just kind of awkwardly standing around and brought me in and kind of, invited me to stand with him over there in Jacksonville. So, I mean, these are all guys that have been a part of this community as long as I've even known what the Rowdies are. So definitely, I think a loss for the Rowdies community to see them stopping the production of the show after this season. But I think you said it right. I think they can leave very satisfied knowing that they completed what they set out to do, which is, being the source for Rowdies information, if not the only source for Rowdies information, while just being, great people in the process. So kudos to them. Kudos to everything they've done. And special shout out to the Unused Substitutes podcast on this episode.
Absolutely. And Dan, I don't think that I will be there, obviously, for your last game, which is supposed to be this Friday. Very unfortunate, but, we wish you all the best. Matt and Steven, I will be able to see and talk to in person, but special shout out specifically to Dan, just because I won't be able to say that to him in person. But yeah, we love you guys. It's unfortunate, but I'm dead certain, as I said, you guys are going to do awesome things in the future, wherever that may be. So that will do it now. On that note, that's our note for this episode in particular. And we want to say thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If you have stuck with us this far, possibly you could go just a little bit farther and follow RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We are at RBLR Sports, and you can also get at me on Twitter if you'd like. I am at RBLR James K, or you can use the hashtag AskRBLR, or perhaps you want to get in touch with Carlos. If they wanted to do that, how could they?
Yeah, come over, follow me on Twitter, Carlos TPA10. I've just got the devastating notification that we are down 2-0 to James Madison. Speaking of Twitter, like literally I just got notification right now. Brutal. You'll see me tweeting about Georgetown men's soccer and women's soccer, Georgetown sports in general, but especially Tampa Bay Rowdies content. Carlos TPA10, come drop a follow.
All right, and if you would please like and subscribe to our podcast. We're on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple and Google Podcasts, YouTube, and other major podcast platforms. We are wherever you want to be. Now, this week, for the unused substitutes, I will say, come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.